right up until that point, the United States is really only focused on traditional nation versus nation warfare. So the Army created the very first Red Team, which was an opportunity for them to train how they fight, right? And that is a key phrase right there, is train how you fight. So cybersecurity looked at it and said, that's brilliant, right? Like, let's train how we fight in cybersecurity and emulate the actual criminal behavior or nation state behavior against an organization. So that's where real risk comes into. That's that final bucket, right? Because real risk is going to tell you exactly based on realistic scenarios.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Simply Offensive. Today I'm joined by Dahvid Schloss. Dahvid and I have known each other from the cybersecurity community for several years and actually had him on the Phillip Wylie show. So it's great to have him on Simply Offensive. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, man. Much appreciated.
Yeah, it's really cool. Since the last time you were on one of my podcasts, you were working for someone else, and then now you've ventured off into your own business, which is really cool. Really love the branding and the t-shirt. It's one of my favorites.
Good. Yeah, no, I mean, Clyde the raccoon, I mean, it basically sells itself, right?
Yeah.
No, it's a good
Yeah,
time.
I like that. Yeah, I can appreciate the good branding. So if you wouldn't mind, just kind of, for those people that may not know who you are, if you wouldn't mind sharing about your background.
Yeah, so my name is Dahvid Schloss. I am, as I jokingly tell people, the emulated mob boss of the emulated criminals. But fun thing is that's my actual title, and I can make it my title because I get to run the company, right? As far as my background, I come from, I guess, a non-traditional / traditional, depending on how you really want to look at it. Started off my career in the military. I spent some time as a special operations radio operator, and then switched over to offensive cyber operations while still working for the Gov. I did the OCO work for real, had a ton of fun doing it, but because I had an injury at the time, the military was like, all right, time to get out. And I got out. So upon leaving, I worked for several consulting firms, including Deloitte and smaller boutique cybersecurity firms. And now I started doing this full time, which is emulated criminals. The way we kind of like to put it is that we are real threat for real prep made real simple, but we can get deeper into that in a little bit.
Sure. Yeah, one of the terms I came up with for red teaming several years ago was threat actor actors.
Threat actor actors. Yeah. No, I dig that. No, I mean, I think when you look at it today, kind of what you would compare us or put us into is more of that continuous adversarial emulation, right? We used to call it red teaming, but as we've been talking before this whole thing, right? Like that dictionary is kind of broken itself in cyber. We could point the blame at many different avenues, but I think it really just comes down to the fact that, like, you know, sales needs to make things sound sexy, and pen test and vulnerability scan doesn't sound as sexy. So we kind of lost the term red teaming. So when we talk about EC, we aren't talking like, oh, we're a continuous pen testing company or a continuous red teaming company, right? We're a continuous adversarial emulation business, really focusing down on that concept and idea of what red teaming should be and what is referred to as, you know, that, I guess now, the adversarial emulation aspect. But now I'm just kind of rambling. That ADHD kind of caught on, and, you know, it's like, oh wait, pretty colors, yeah.
If you wouldn't mind explaining for the audience, I mean, what was traditionally red teaming before, but, you know, I do like the term adversarial emulation since that's really, truly more what it does. If you wouldn't mind sharing the difference between that and pen testing.
Yeah, so I like to break down the different levels of offensive security testing into three broader categories of risk, right? So you have hypothetical risk, which is what you can think of as vulnerability scanners. They tell you, hey, this is probably vulnerable. It's missing a patch, or, you know, this POC that we have is indicating that it may be vulnerable, but it's not proving the fact that it's vulnerable. It's just saying, hey, we're missing this, right? So it's all hypothetical. Then you have practical risk, and practical risk is more so what we would think about in pen testing, which pen testing is controlled testing into a singular or very scoped in vertical, right? So we can do web app pen testing, we can do network pen testing, Active Directory, you know, the list goes on, but it's scoped, contained. So you're proving the hypothetical, if the hypothetical exists, but it's only in a practical sense. It doesn't tell the organization really what are their risks to their business and to their revenue, right? It looks at like how many vulnerabilities can we find and actually exploit and get to some of the more crown jewel items like privilege escalation and others, but it's not calling out here are specific business risks. Now, red teaming, to understand red teaming a little bit, you have to understand where it comes from. So red team actually comes from the late 60s, early 70s when we were in the Vietnam War, and we had no idea how to fight guerrilla warfare. Right up until that point, the United States is really only focused on traditional nation versus nation warfare. So the Army created the very first red team, which was an opportunity for them to train how they fight, right? And that is a key phrase right there, is train how you fight. So cybersecurity looked at it and said, that's brilliant, right? Like, let's train how we fight in cybersecurity and emulate the actual criminal behavior or nation state behavior against an organization. So that's where real risk comes into. That's that final bucket, right? Because real risk is going to tell you exactly based on realistic scenarios and without scoping out the attack paths, how a threat actor, nation state, hacktivist, criminal can go from point A of no access to point B of some access to point C, some form of business impact, right? So that's where red teaming really comes in and how it's defined, right? Like now, if you want to look at red teaming, people look at it and say, well, red team's the group, the individual, the guys on the other end, the gray hat hackers, or whatever color we want to assign to the hat today. But the truth is that the red team has always been the adversary and has always been to emulate the adversary. And so when you do that, a blue team or a defensive team or legal or whoever's involved inside the exercise can fully understand where their real risk is. Because you might find eternal blue on the network, but it doesn't mean that you can exploit that and get to domain admin, right? So it's kind of a jumbled up like definition to red teaming.
Yeah. So one of the things too, folks that may not be familiar with both, what are kind of the time requirements and restrictions to both of those, traditional pen testing and then adversary emulation?
So, I mean, pen testing is very variable, I think. When we talk about web app pen tests, right? You can do a fairly decent web app pen test, which includes the front end, which includes the API, in roughly about a week, right? Like they don't take a tremendous amount of time. It just really depends on how scoped it is. Versus like you could be on a network pen test and that network pen test can be 2, 3, 4 weeks. A red team engagement, usually months, right? Like we're talking at least a minimum of 30 days, right? And that's if the environment is small or your emulation profile is small. It is possible to do in a month, but it's very, very quick and maybe a little rushed, right? If you have a better understanding of your client organization, then a month can be beneficial. But if you really don't have a background, like your team doesn't really understand who the client is, they don't understand what the threat profile looks like, they don't have anything set up, which is like many, consulting offensive security firms, nothing set up until the day of go, like that takes time, right? So you're looking at 3, 4, 5 months really to do a really good, strong, effective red team. Problem with that is cost, right? And those things do play a factor when you do these kind of one-off tests, like red teaming and pen testing tend to be. But there are ways to, I guess, balance that out when you look at it from a holistic ecosystem. But it really just depends on what is the goal of the organization? If they're wanting to look at their network, it might be 2 weeks. If they want to do a red team, an actual real red team, probably 40, 90 days.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting too for the folks that this is kind of new content for you to be listening to, is also the fact that, with the red team or adversary emulation, the control team knows what's going on, but a lot of other folks don't, because you're kind of testing the defenders and not only the technology, which, kind of affects the time of these. Because, the pen test, you can go on there guns a-blazing, and get through it quick. You're not worried about being detected, and where the type of work you guys are doing, you're trying to go undetected.
Yeah, I think, bringing it to the physical world, because a lot of times when we talk about cyber, it being non-corporeal makes it really difficult for us to conceptualize. I think many people who are in tech are nerds, so they play video games, right? So think of it as like you're playing Call of Duty or something. The shotgun is going to have a wider spread, and it doesn't really change anything. Like, that they're there, right? Like, you got to get up close, or it's really loud. The flip side is the guy with the sniper rifle sitting on the other end of the map. You don't really know where he's at. You don't know what he's doing, and his whole job is to hide, right? Hide and take it out. So there's a certain level of precision that comes in, at least with adversarial emulation. Like, what we really focus on at EC is, to an extent, right, to be just like the criminals operate, right? Whether that be nation state, whether it be cybercrime, or even hacktivists. And sometimes hacktivists, for example, are very, very noisy. But it doesn't mean that we actually stop that behavior. Alerts get created all the time, and it's up to us as defenders to really know what to do with those alerts, which is why adversarial simulation or red teaming is really important to do on either once or multiple occasions throughout the year, because you don't want to be performing CPR for the first time on scene, right? And that's what a lot of our defenders end up doing. Is you're the first line of defense as a defender, as a security guy. Like, you don't call the cops, you don't call the FBI unless you're a public company. But you get breached, who do they call? They call you, the IT defender. So you got to respond appropriately. And if your first time running through the playbook is when it's a real game day, you're doing CPR without ever having done training. So it becomes a very, very big issue. And we saw a lot of times with organizations where, when they don't have this practice, they don't have this, like, hey, I know what I need to do. I know who I need to call. I know what playbook I need to roll up. Their time to contain is significantly longer. And then, even then, their effectiveness at containing is significantly lower. So it's like we're giving that practice. And that's really where red teaming is important, because it is that practice to walk through the motions with a sparring partner that isn't going to, make your nose bleed.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting too sometimes to be performing tests, because I've had pen tests in the past where the customer wanted us to go in and try to go undetected as long as we could, start out that way. And then as you progress here, just go ahead and, don't worry about being getting discovered, because we got to finish this test. But it's amazing, because I was doing a test once for a company where it's more a red team type exercise, because no one knew what was going on. And it got down, we were down last day of the engagement, and we went on site, and we were like in one of the conference rooms, and we just had to hurry up and get this knocked out. So I was doing like Nessus scans and running Metasploit and Responder. Actually was able to, this is in 2018, so they still had XP in their environment. So I was able to pwn an XP machine, create an account, get on there, and they didn't even detect we were there until like 12 hours after we were gone. And this was like a really good CISO that ran the security team, and they had all these tools and stuff. Things weren't just tuned right to be able to detect that. So it's kind of crazy sometimes what goes undetected. And even when you're not trying to be undetected, like the case of the last hours when we were there.
Well, I mean, it's, even beyond pen testing, red teaming, I think a lot of times organizations assume their capabilities are far better than they actually are, right? Like, there's, the video that we're working on right now, for Crime Time, self plug, but that video is about a Dutch hacker who hacked a port, like a dock, where all your goods come in. He hacked a port and was just bashing the IDS and endpoints like it was going out of style. Like, the IDS was actively blocking him and creating alerts against him. The defensive engineering team did not find or catch or remove him, Like the whole story basically ends with this guy getting arrested because of a whole different situation, which just led to him being disclosed as a hacker on the port. But a lot of times when we look at these security controls, especially with our clients, it's like, we as leaders, we get told what's good and what's not, right? The organization is going to say, hey, like we're really concerned about this or we're not really concerned about that. I don't pass that on to the teams, right? That's up to them to figure out what's good and what's not because we want the most realistic scenario that we possibly can play out. But, a lot of times I'll hear like, yeah, we got a really good IDS or we got a really good EDR system or, insert XYZ. And it just ends up not being effective for one reason or another. The controls aren't working as intended. And red teaming really showcases that as like, all right, hey guys, like you said you were good and let's make you good. But here's the reality. That was really long winded. My bad.
No worries. That's all good. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. And also too, what are your thoughts of purple teaming? That's one of the newer types of assessments out there. What are your views on purple teaming?
So I think purple teaming is the necessity created by poor red teaming. Because if you look at red teaming truthfully, as it was intended, purple teaming is part of red teaming. Like there has always been, at least from my experience in the military and running red teams since 2018, there's always a sit down period. There's always here's what we did as a red team. Here's what you guys found as a blue team. Let's find the improvement between the two. Right. And having that communication to break down and sit down and go, all right, here's what's good. Here's what's bad. Here's how we improve. Here's how you improve, vice versa. It should always be a conversation. And the fact that now we have this purple teaming concept really just showcases like how much we've failed and strived. I guess what's the word that I'm looking at? Like diverted away from real red teaming, right? Like when you talk about what EC does, especially like it's much more aligned with the purple teaming mentality because the way we see adversarial emulation and continuous adversarial emulation is to focus on continual improvement for the organization. It's not a you versus me kind of situation. And it never should have been. Like the gatekeeping that has occurred between red teams, red teamers, red team engagements, and blue teams, blue teamers, and their validation exercises has grown so far apart that it's like now, yeah, we have to use the term purple teaming because no one's been doing this right. Well, some have, but a lot haven't because for some reason or another, sexier terms sell, and people have been getting less than what they've actually deserved. So, like, I think purple teaming is a necessity, but it should have been from the get-go part of red teaming, part of adversarial emulation. Like, it should have never been this you versus me kind of mentality.
So how important is tooling on adversarial emulation, be able to create tools and custom solutions? Because, with pen testing, it's not always seems to be as an important piece because there's a lot of tools that work really well out there. But, trying to emulate, real world threat actors, I would imagine that's a little more important.
Yeah, I think there's two avenues of thought here, right? And I think both have credit to them. One is that you really don't need to know tooling because a lot of threat actors out there are script kiddies. We like to mystify our cyber criminals like there's some super sweet hacker dude in a basement drinking Mountain Dew and blasting drum and bass. But the truth is like they're just really good with tech and Google and they script kiddie it up because why put through the effort? On the flip side, tooling's really important, especially understanding how to create custom tooling because some of the more advanced threat actors that do create their own tools, they're not going out and using Cobalt Strike. They're not going out and using Nmap. They're not going out and, using Mimikatz. They're building their own stuff because custom equals evasion. Doesn't have to be complex. Like, I think that's another piece that we usually get tied up into, and that's a whole different story we can go down later. But like tooling on that end, on the more advanced threat actors is extremely important and understanding how to write similar code. Doesn't have to be exact, but similar code to match the TTPs that are common for those threat actors is very, very important. But if you're just looking for the most common kind of threat actors out there for adversarial emulation, honestly, just some general knowledge of how to create a loader is usually enough.
So what about command and control to use? Because I know you mentioned Cobalt Strike. That's getting a lot more detected. Just being able to evade endpoints and successfully use your command and control. So what's kind of your insights on that?
Yeah, so like C2s almost entirely get caught at the deployment stage, not at the run stage, right? Like if you get caught in the run stage, it's usually because you did something very OPSEC not safe, right? Like you tried to dump LSAS using Mimikatz without system admin, right? Like there's something that you did wrong to get caught there. So the C2 itself matters a little less than the deployment. That's not to say though at like the network level or the proxy level that you wouldn't see some sort of, hey, there's beaconing activity that we need to catch. In tools like Cobalt Strike, tools like Mythic and others with those agent or custom agents, you can customize that callback profile a little bit more uniquely so that it follows more of the human element to it. I mean, we've used to use jitter all the time, right? But jitter itself is not enough anymore. So there needs to be some form of user agent control or, where your rotational endpoints are. And a lot of that isn't feature rich in commercial software because it just becomes very, very signatured very, very quickly, right? So where threat actors come in and use this kind of ideology is they figure, how do I emulate human behavior a little bit better? And then they build that into their agents, whether it's a custom Mythic agent or if they can, a custom Cobalt Strike if they don't want to rebuild their own C2. But I think when you really look at it from a criminal or a nation state perspective, most of these C2s that they're using uh, are just cracked versions of paid for ones. And when they do that, it's the loader that is somewhat custom. And how they bring it into the OS and how they create their persistence is custom. It's not, hey, I found this off of GitHub. Let me download it, /execute. Oh, we're obfuscated.
So I know these type of operations get a little more complex. What kind of planning goes into planning one of these types of operations?
Well, planning, I think, is probably one of the more elongated elements of a red team. Usually when you're planning a red team, you have to think of the threat intel, or you should be thinking of the client's threat intel, or if it's an internal, red team, then their own internal organization's threat intel. Then figuring out like what is the most relevant to test. You don't want to be bringing in multiple threat actors. You're not like, hey, I want to do scattered spider and I want to do APT42 and I want to do APT1 or mage cart. Like that kind of ruins the concept of emulation because there's too many things to focus on. You're not really checking the the particular threat actor. You're saying, hey, just run a pen test and make it a little bit more advanced, right? Um, so planning's huge because you really have to understand what's the motivation, what's the TTPs that they use, are there tools that you can pull from the internet, or do you have to create your own to mimic that? What kind of infrastructure do they use? Do we have the ability to emulate that infrastructure? Hopefully, yeah. I mean, everybody's got access to AWS nowadays, and most of the time you can use a free account to set up infrastructure in there and tear up and tear down, build up, tear down. But I would say that usually it's about a 2-3 months long process of just planning, right? Even before you get to the point of execution, buying your domains ahead of time. That should be like a year in advance. It should not be like a month or two beforehand, right? You got to prep the domain. You got to get that domain categorized. There's a lot that goes into it because just like a nation state or a cyber crime group, they are not just thinking on the whim, today I'm going to go and hack Clorox, right? They're thinking, okay, hey, this would be a really good target. I have a really good phishing pretext. Let's go ahead and try that on the infrastructure that we've already set up. So you kind of have to put yourself into that mentality, that crime mentality of, if I was a nation state or I was a cyber criminal or a hacktivist, like what would I need to do to make myself successful?
So for someone that wanted to get in to do an adversary emulation, what are your recommendations?
Personally, I like to say you should study a little bit of criminology. I think really understanding why crime happens and why somebody may attack an organization in a certain fashion is a really, really important skill and is a very underrated skill because in red teaming, you're trying to find the business impact, not just privilege escalation, right? Like privilege escalation is cool. It may lead to ransomware, right? But doesn't always, right? It doesn't always lead to getting that goal. Or why do ransomware when you could just download the PII database because they left it in an unsecure drive? So it's getting you into that mentality of like, what does the criminal actually want, and going after that. Beyond that, I mean, it's a lot of technical skills, right? You really have to be comfortable in understanding what things do and how they interact with the OS. There are a lot of script kiddies out there, right? Like, I'm not going to overblow it and say like, yes, all cybercrime is full of people who are very much top of game, but they're smarter than the average IT worker, right? They have a general understanding of how things work and how things operate and what alerts and what doesn't alert. So it's a lot of research that goes into it. I mean, these guys could easily be pen testers and red teamers or security researchers as legitimate individuals. Just the circumstances that they were in lead to just doesn't play the cards for them.
So I know you see a lot of AI in offensive security. So how is that affecting red teaming? Has it been something that's been used in adversarial emulation to help scale your capabilities?
Here's what I say about AI, right? Like AI has made the impossible the hard problem, right? The impossible problem is now the hard problem. The hard problem is now the easy problem. The easy problem is now not even worth solving because it's already done. Red teaming has never been the impossible. It's always been the hard. But there are elements in red teaming like AV evasion, like steadiness or human behavior that are really, really difficult to emulate through AI. So a lot of the times when we see a lot of AI hype around like, oh, well, this tool was doing like an autonomous red team attack. And you go, okay, cool. So what AV products were deployed in the network? There was no AV products in the network. Oh, okay. What did the AI tool do to get initial access? Oh, well, we executed the program locally. Like, all right, dudes, you guys didn't do a red team. You did a pen test with no AV, right? Like, AI is really strong. It's smart. In a year to 5 years, I'm probably going to be eating my words significantly, but it's not there yet. It it's not doing everything it needs to do to emulate the desperation of humans wanting money to reach some sort of goal, right? Whether that's self-sufficiency or just pure greed. On top of that, it really doesn't have OPSEC in mind. Like I've seen a lot of these tools. I've seen the stuff like Anthropic's put out and all that jazz. And it's like, no, it's not close. It's not close to the human beings just yet. Can it amplify those human beings? 100%. Don't get me wrong, right? Like I'm a malware developer by trade, and AI is catching up to being able to write decent malware. I say decent, it's not great, but it's decent, right? You still have to go back. You still have to fix a lot of errors to just even get past like the point of AV evasion. But it is getting there. It's slow, but it's getting there. But like, I don't think there's any reason to be concerned that AI is turning around and conducting full on attacks, right? Especially in an environment that is strong enough to catch Metasploit. It should have no problem being caught itself. I think my favorite thing about AI recently was like the China was found using an autonomous agent for recon. And I think a lot of people were really freaked. Oh my God, AI is being used for autonomous recon. Did we all forget that Shodans existed for like 20 years? Right? Like, it's just, we're rehashing a lot of the same old tools that we used to use in environments and just throwing the sticker AI on top of it and saying like, oh, hey, we're able to do XYZ. But the truth is, it's like Pantera, Horizon 3, and other autonomous autonomous pen testing companies have been doing if else statement pen testing for quite a while now, right? Even without the birth of LLMs. So this is nothing new. It still hasn't improved us to the point to where we're able to just run an AI agent and effectively bypass great security controls through Sentinel-1 or CrowdStrike or Carbon Black or any other like fancy EDR system, right? So like you can use it to amplify your speed into being able to do the prep work. but to use it in an engagement, I think is a little short-sighted and probably is going to get you caught.
Yeah, very interesting because that's one of the things, especially the kind of work you do. Some of these other, pen testing, you're not so worried about getting caught doing, red teaming and adversary emulation. Then you're trying to not be caught. So I can kind of see where those kind of be a ways away. I really haven't seen anyone that has a true adversary emulation product out there using AI. I haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, I think many claim it, right? They claim they have some form of it, but I haven't seen anyone release a report that says, here's the environment with the AVs and the security products, well configured, not in passive mode, and was undetected. Many times these things are like neutered if they're running in some sort of environment, to the point of where it's like, yeah, it wouldn't respond anyways because you have it in passive mode, right? Like, of course it didn't alert because in passive mode it doesn't tell you. So, I think that we will get there. Don't get me wrong, right? Like as technology improves and things get better, things get faster, like, yeah, there's a trade-off here, right? You create something that can create a cyber weapon, it's going to create the cyber weapon. But we're not there. I don't think we'll get there till, 1 to 5 years at the rate that we're going.
Well, I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to join me today. Do you have any closing comments?
No, I mean, if anything, check out Emulated Criminals. We'd love to have a conversation. We like to joke that it doesn't cost a dime to talk to us. Do continuous adversarial validation and emulation, but we also dabble in the whole other one-off kind of tests like pen testing and more traditional red teaming. But yeah, that's us in a nutshell. Love to love to talk to you if you're interested.
So if anyone that wants to connect, we'll have David's information in the show notes, including his website as well as his LinkedIn. So if you want to connect with him and learn more about what he's doing, and you guys have some content coming out, or is that
Yeah, so kind of through we've been supporting my other group, right? The Cyber Idiots. We've been researching what we call Crime Time, which I alluded to earlier, which is basically a video series on different cyber crimes and kind of a more humorous take on it, so people can learn a little bit on like what's actually happened in the world, and then get some takeaways from it, like what can we learn from these kind of attacks? Because a lot of times we look at something like the Bangladesh bank heist, right? And we go, all right, well, what can we learn from the Bangladesh bank heist other than don't go on holiday? So that's really what we're aiming to do. The crew over at EC has been phenomenal because we already do a lot of research on our own. They've been supporting the script writing over at the Cyber Idiots to get the Crime Time episodes all written up and bring some humorous flair to it. But that is the general video stuff that we're working on right now.
well, very cool? So thanks again. I appreciate you joining.
Yeah, man. Party hard, but not too hard.
Thanks everyone, and we'll see you on the next episode.